The drums of retribution. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and looming conflict. In the heart of the West African forest, where ancient trees cast long shadows over winding paths, the kingdom of Benin stood proud, an empire of brass and blood, of sacred rituals and mighty walls. For centuries, its obas had ruled with divine authority, and none dared to challenge the kingdom's strength. But in 1897, the tide of history came crashing against those very walls. It began months before, when a British delegation, led by Acting Consul General James Phillips, set out for Benin. Though warned that their entry during sacred rituals was forbidden, they marched forward, confident in the might of their empire. The Oba of Benin, Oven Ramwan Nogbaisai, was caught between diplomacy and tradition. He could not allow outsiders to desecrate the sacred rites of the kingdom. The result was bloody. The British party was ambushed outside the city, and only a few survived. The British called it a massacre. In London, the newspapers screamed for vengeance. The Empire would respond. In February 1897, a British punitive expedition was launched under the command of Admiral Sir Harry Rawson. It was not a mere military patrol, it was a calculated show of imperial force. Over 1,200 men, including African auxiliaries, British Marines, and soldiers from the West African Frontier Force, were shipped to the Bight of Benin. Equipped with Maxim guns, rocket launchers, and the full machinery of colonial warfare, they descended upon the rainforest like an iron storm. The journey inland was not swift. The dense forests seemed to resist the advance. Trees had to be cut down, paths cleared, and small villages pacified. But the soldiers pressed forward, their boots trampling the sacred soil of Edo land. By the second week of February, they reached the Great Walls of Benin, a complex system of earthen ramparts and moats, among the most sophisticated pre-colonial fortifications in the world. The British marveled, but only briefly. "We blow through it," Captain Walker said, eyeing the ancient walls. "No African kingdom stands against the Queen." Within the city, word had already reached Oba Oven Ramwan. He had summoned his war chiefs. The Ibaiwe, the Azomo, the Ojifa, all had come with their warriors. Spears, poisoned arrows, Dane guns, and rituals of protection were prepared. The priests of Ogun, god of iron and war, smeared their bodies with chalk and blood, calling upon the ancestors to shield the city. But even in their preparations, there was fear. The sound of the British guns had already echoed from the outskirts. They were not like the Portuguese or Dutch of old. These invaders came not to trade but to destroy. On the morning of February 18th, the assault began. The British fired their rockets first. Flaming trails lit up the gray sky as explosions rocked the ancient ramparts. Cannons followed, and then came the Maxim guns, the rapid clatter of death tearing into the walls that had stood for centuries. The defenders returned fire, arrows, and musket balls flying from the battlements. War drums beat furiously across the city, a defiant rhythm that seemed to shake the ground itself. But the walls began to fall. The jungle roared with the fury of battle. Smoke mingled with the cries of the wounded. And as British forces breached the outer defenses, the heart of Benin quaked, not just with war, but with the end of an era. Chapter 2. The Fall of the Leopard Kingdom. Flames licked the sky as smoke curled above the city like a morning veil. The once proud ramparts of Benin had been reduced to rubble, the great earthen defenses breached by the thunder of British artillery. What had taken generations to build was now crumbling beneath the relentless advance of foreign steel. Inside the city, panic spread like wildfire. The royal guards, fierce warriors adorned in coral beads and leopard skins, fought desperately to repel the invaders. Their chants filled the air, invoking the power of their ancestors. They had sworn to protect the Oba to the last man. Arrows flew from concealed positions, catching a few British soldiers off guard. Dane guns barked from rooftops, and defenders struck with spears in the narrow alleyways of the inner city. But their weapons were no match for the Maxim guns, which spat bullets faster than the eye could follow. With every pull of the trigger, warriors fell. Still, Benin did not yield quietly. In the sacred courtyards of the palace, women and elders hurried to conceal the kingdom's treasures, bronze plaques, ivory tusks, and ritual masks that told the story of 1,000 years. They buried what they could in hidden chambers, behind false walls, or beneath shrines. Priests chanted incantations, believing the gods would soon rise in fury and drive the white men back into the sea. But the gods remained silent. By nightfall, British troops were inside the royal city. Fires raged through homes, shrines, and sacred groves. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and burning wood. The British looted everything of value. They tore the brass plaques from the palace walls, pried open the shrines, and carted off the ivory that once marked the wealth of Benin's kings. Hundreds of artifacts were packed into crates, destined for London museums and private collections, cultural treasures reduced to war trophies. Oba Oven Ramwan, meanwhile, had fled. With the palace overrun, he escaped into the forest with a handful of loyal chiefs and guards. 4 days, he eluded capture, hiding deep in the creeks of the Niger Delta. The British, furious at the resistance and the heavy losses they had suffered during the campaign, declared him a fugitive. But he knew the war was lost. Benin had not fallen from weakness, it had fallen from isolation. The world had changed, and the kingdom had not changed with it. In August 1897, months after the city's fall, the Oba finally surrendered. Dressed in full regalia, he presented himself before the British in a final act of dignity. There would be no trial. He was exiled to Calabar, far from his people, far from his ancestors. The throne sat empty, the Oba's coral crown taken as a souvenir. The city was quiet now. The war drums had gone silent. The bronze casters' workshops were deserted. The great Iroko trees stood like silent witnesses to a fallen kingdom. Benin, the city of kings and gods, had been broken, not by the sword alone, but by the weight of empire. Yet, in the silence, a memory remained. Of a kingdom that once ruled the forests. Of warriors who faced guns with spears. Of a people whose spirit could not be carted off with a loot. And though the British had taken the walls, the bronzes, and the crown, what they could never fully destroy was the soul of Benin.